Hello, everybody. I'm Mark Herman. I'm one of the founders of Simple, and I have the honor of stepping in for Stephanie in this webinar. She's currently on a well-deserved holiday. Maybe just to do a first practical check, can you just let me know whether you can hear me and see me properly? Just put something in the chat so I know that I'm visible. All right, that's good. Thank you for that first reaction. Lots of people here from all over Europe, even as far as Ukraine, where I think it's probably at the moment already 5 o'clock. So almost the end of the day for you guys. So thanks for joining. Okay, let's set up the presentation and start here. We have a full hour packed with lots of goodies and information. So let's have a look here. And if all goes well, you should be seeing my screen now. So I hope that is the case. Not really a possibility to check that here, but I'm just going to assume that will be the case. If not, somebody will come and tell me that I'm not going live. Okay, let's see. What are we going to be talking about today? We'll talk about why should you use Facebook for recruiting. Then what you should be paying attention to when preparing all that, going a bit deeper in the tactics of how to set up a campaign, and very importantly, how do you measure results. So I'll take you through all of that in the next. All right, I'm very sorry. It seems we have lost connection. Can you just confirm that you can hear me again now? I'm really very sorry for this. And thank you for sticking around, by the way. Okay. All right, good. Apologies, we're back in business. We're back on screen. So let me start by sharing the screen again. I'll go to the chat so I can see your comments coming in. All right, so we're back in business, and again, apologies for that. Looks like the broadband connection here was not on our side. Okay, look, what I'll do first, I'll start in the meantime with a small poll just to check how many of you have actually already published a campaign already on Facebook. So while you're voting on that, it's on the right-hand side of your screen. That's where you can see the poll. Let's have a look at results. Interesting. Interesting. Okay, so we have a nice balance here, and that's exactly what we're looking for. So we have a nice balance here with people who have already recruited and used Facebook. That's brilliant. Okay, and again, please don't hesitate to ask any questions, whether you think it's too easy or too difficult. I'm hoping we'll be able to manage both, so we can make this as interactive as possible. Okay, so why should you recruit on Facebook? And I'll make up for the lost time in the meantime, so don't worry, we won't go over time. Let's have a look here. Good. All right. Why should you recruit on Facebook? Well, as you know, there's many of channels out there. There's job boards like Indeed, Stepstone, Google, even not a job board, but obviously the search engine. You will only be reaching active job seekers with those channels. And you're all fishing in the same pond, in the same pool. About 20% of the workforce is actively looking for a job. But you're missing out on 80% of the passive job seekers, which is a very interesting pool to fish in, to kind of continue the analogy there. And that's where you want to be kind of targeting your candidates. That's where you want to be looking for candidates for your vacancy. And the ideal way to do that is to use Facebook. Just to put a number on there, an average user of Facebook, and when we're talking Facebook, we're talking about the Facebook platform, including Instagram, including Messenger and WhatsApp. An active Facebook user is scrolling through 160 meters per day on his or her phone, right? That's a massive amount of time. That's a lot of surface and real estate that you can use to actually put your ads in there. And that's what we'll be talking about today. Okay, now let's talk about the basics first. And when you see me looking at the right, that's because I'm anxiously looking at my second screen to hope that there's people who are asking a question. Um, so let's look at the funnel, because I think it's important that we'll talk about the same terms and the same definitions. You're obviously all in recruiting, so you kind of know how a recruitment funnel works, i.e. you have people who apply, then you go through a selection process, and eventually you hire a couple of them, or at least hopefully one person for that vacancy. Now, keep that principle in mind and actually start looking a bit forward, because your marketing funnel is going to be very similar. You're not ideally just going to want to talk to people who are currently looking for a job, because they might not have the right background, they might not have the right interest, they might not be aware of your company. So you should start thinking about actually building a similar funnel online, with kind of in a discovery phase, talk a bit more in general about give some content related to the vacancies you might be looking for. For instance, let's say you're looking for some people in construction. What you could be doing is put some content out there in general about construction projects or tips and tricks for building or working at construction projects, not linked to your company yet. And that way, you're going to start discovering who might be clicking on that. You're going to start collecting data, and that's data that you can use in the following stages. And only in the attract phase, you will start showing your vacancy. That's very important to keep in mind, is that this is going to be a process. You're going to have to start building your data set to start building on that to attract the right audience. But we'll talk a bit about that in detail further on. More importantly now, is I just want to show how the principle works of the marketing funnel leading up to pushing people to the application page where they can actually apply. Okay. Good. Now, how do you prepare for building a campaign? How do you prepare actually setting up your campaign so you can reach the right people? The beauty of Facebook is the massive amount of targeting possibilities that you have in actually reaching the right audience. It's incomparable with Indeed. It doesn't even come close. Even Google actually doesn't have the same data on their users that Facebook has. So that's really where Facebook shines, which is one of the advantages. Apart from the fact that you can reach passive candidates, this is really the core and why we are so enthusiastic about using Facebook. Now, one of the obvious ways of targeting is using location. It's quite easy. If, let's say, you're recruiting for a function in Milan, and I'm deliberately giving a place where I hope the weather is better than here in Antwerp at the moment. If you're looking at hiring somebody in Milan, you don't want your advertising to be seen in Venice or in Turin or in Rome, for that matter. So you're going to be focusing on Milan and maybe do a circle of 20, 30 kilometers around that, depending on how far you think people will be willing to travel to your location. Now, this is an easy one. Location, very easy to also kind of pinpoint that data in Facebook. Now, the really important and the real powerful part on Facebook comes when you start looking at interests. Now, the beauty of Facebook is that actually when they define interests of their audience, they actually will do that based on the actual behavior of their users. So an engineer will probably visit a lot of, they will click on content which is technical related. They will visit websites that have technical information or for people with a technical background. All that data is actually aggregated by Facebook, and that allows you to start targeting people with, for instance, in this case, a technical interest. Totally different example. Let's assume you're in the car leasing business and you want to reach people who have an interest in cars. Again, that might be one of the interests you could use Facebook for your targeting. Now, One advice, and a very important advice, if you go into Facebook Business Manager and you start clicking around, you will see the actual millions of different interests that you can actually choose. Now, the danger is that you can go in there and you will start clicking and say, oh, that might be interesting, and why not? I'll click on this also. What we strongly advise is to start thinking about what is the persona you're looking for, what is the kind of audience you need and you want to reach. Put that on a paper, sit down with your team, with your colleague, do a bit of brainstorming, and only then go to Facebook Ads Manager and start actually defining that. Because otherwise, as they say in English, the agony of choice, you'll have too many choices to actually make a relevant choice. So that's the second part which you can use for your targeting. And the last part, or the third priority, or the third most important part, is what we would call data. And this is all the data you have collected yourself in the past with past advertising campaigns or other data sets that you can have. And this is really important. And we'll talk about how you can start gathering data today. We will talk about the Facebook Pixel in about 15 minutes, I think, if we stay on track. But the more data you collect, the more data you own yourself, the stronger and better your campaigns will be in the future. And that's really important because that's data that you will own, that your competitors won't have access to, and that you can use to make your campaigns better. And this data set is really important because that will build you and help you moving further. Maybe just to show you how powerful that data can be, just kind of a short view on our software, which is what our customers are using. And this will show you how we actually use the data from the past to do that. To explain that, let's assume you're looking for a barista. We have made data sets of all the different vacancies we have done in the past, for instance, in hospitality. And we will then use all the data from hospitality vacancies and campaigns for a certain level of experience to target the right people. Now, you can only do this. Okay, we have 4 years of data. That's a massive amount. But even if you only have 6 months of data, the more data you will have and the more data you'll be able to actually attribute to the right vacancies, to the right audiences, you make better campaigns in the future. Now, that's about data. What's also going to be important if you start managing your campaign is to understand what your competition is doing, right? And again, important, because that's where Facebook is completely different. Don't think of your competition as the competition of your company, right? Let's take an example, the same example as I used before about a car leasing company. Now, if you're in a car leasing company, you might think, well, my competitors here for this vacancy are other leasing companies. Maybe if you're thinking wild, maybe even other companies in the financial sector like banks, insurances, etc., etc. But the thing is, you have to think even wider. Because if we use the example before, if you're going to be targeting people who have an interest in cars, and that's like a really good audience to target, you'll actually be competing with companies in the car industry, because Volvo will also be targeting people with an interest in cars. So you'll have to keep in mind that when you start about competition, think broadly about who will be competing for the same audience as you are, because that's going to be also important to have a look at. What is Volvo doing? How is Volvo still talking to a car audience? And how are my real competitors talking to a same audience? And there's an interesting tool, and that's one of the first tools we're going to share with you today. It's called Facebook Ads Library. And Facebook Ads Library actually allows you to go live and look at the advertising of other companies that you might be interested in. I'll just go live here. You can see that now. Yes, so let's have a look here. I'm just going to ask the audience, is there any company you would like to see the advertising of? So we can have a look at them now. So just put it in the chat. Not sure if anybody's still awake there. IKEA. All right, let's go with IKEA. Let's go here. IKEA. We'll take IKEA USA. And what's interesting is actually that you can actually see all the ads that IKEA is currently running. I hope that's visible on the screen. You can see on what platforms they're running them. You can see whether it's Facebook, Instagram, the targeting they have done. But remember, this is only for live ads. So these are the ads they have live at the moment. Isabella is asking for Wolt. I have never heard of Wolt, Isabella. So that's going to be an interesting one. Let's see. All right, is it Wolt in Lithuania? Let's try this one. All right, these are the ads Wolt is currently running. And Julie's asking for Econocom. So I'll do one more. It's probably the wrong one. I'll take here. Ads from, okay, so they're not running any ads at the moment in Econocom. So that's also good learning to understand whether your competitors are actually running ads at the moment. That gives you a good idea on what they're doing. We'll actually paste the link to Facebook Ads Library in the chat, so you can actually, when after the webinar is finished, you can go and look yourself. So there you go. Just promise not to do it now, right? Stay here. We still have lots of interesting information to follow. So let's go back to the presentation. So if you search a competition, you kind of have a good idea now on what they're doing. You've maybe had some ideas on visuals you want to use and could use. That's brilliant. Now, let's go further and have a look here on what it is you need to make attractive ads. As I mentioned, we have a separate webinar on that, but just to give you a top line, there's a couple of things we've learned from the 6,000 campaigns we've run in the past, and that's use authentic pictures. So don't put typical corporate, hyper-professional made pictures in there, because people won't believe those, right? So you want to show pictures about your team, give a face to the company. I'll show you some examples here. Even if it's just the office, so people actually have an idea of where they might be working. Keep your communication uniform. That means if you use your logo, kind of color, your brand colors on the campaign that you will be showing on Facebook, use the same wording, the same colors, the same logos on the page where they will be landing. Right? There's still a lot of people who click away after landing on a page after 5 seconds because they maybe think they clicked on the wrong link. So not everybody has the patience that you think they might have. So make it as similar as possible, linked to your campaign. And lastly, there's a lot of Facebook best practices out there. There used to be, for instance, one that where they advised not to use more than 20% of your picture for text. That's kind of one of the examples we can give. So just Google around to Facebook best practices, but I will come back to that in a second. Always test and just don't assume that something is working for another company. It will automatically be the right choice for you. I'll be repeating that a couple of times down the line. And then also with Facebook best practices, obviously, you'll need to kind of have the right dimensions. You probably know that stories, both for Instagram and Facebook, is more of a vertical format, while in the news feed, they prefer to have square pictures, and the same for video, where you have to take into account some aspect ratios. Laura, thank you for that. I'll take it as the first question, and there's already an answer there. So thanks for picking that up, Amber. Now, as far as setting up the advertising is concerned. This might be a bit complicated if you've never had experience with Facebook Ads Manager. Also something there which we have done in our software to help you. And let's continue with our example of the barista. The only thing you need to do is bring your text, right? Then upload your logo, upload a nice visual, because obviously you want to have a big visual if you want to attract a barista, and have something which will people click on the advertising. As you can see, our software will automatically put a banner on there to indicate that this is a function you're looking for. And you'll also be able in our software to actually crop and make the adaptations for the right format. So even if your initial picture is not the right format, our software will automatically do those adaptations right there. We cannot make this easier. We tried, but this is as easy as it can be. Okay. So, and also very important, what our software will allow you to do is not only test one picture, but also test different pictures next to each other. And here you see one of the more famous baristas in the world. Unfortunately, he recently passed away. So we just want to pay our respects to Gunther here. Okay, now, I talked a couple of times already about testing, and this is really important in everything you do, right? Just to kind of put a practical example out there, what is an A/B test? An A/B test is where you test two different kinds of advertising against each other, but you just change one variable. And in this example, you see we've kept the text the same, we've kept the banner at the same place with the same colors, but the big difference here is the picture. The picture on the left has just a picture of the team, and the picture on the right has a picture with people with their safety masks on, and the smartphone showing their smile, which we thought was actually quite a funny picture. And I'll just launch the poll here to check which picture you think delivered the most applications. So again, you'll find the poll on the right-hand side of your screen. Let's have a look there. Interesting. I'll just give you 5 more seconds to vote, which basically allows me to have a drink. Okay, it's about a slight preference for the picture on the right, so a picture with the smartphone and the masks. That's also what we thought, because we loved that picture. We thought it was very funny and that people would like it. But the tests proved us wrong, right? So not only did we have a lot more applications with the campaign on the left, but on top of that, the cost per application, so the CPA is cost per application, was a lot cheaper on the left. We won't talk about how we calculate CPAs today. Again, if you're interested into that kind of detail, look at our data-driven recruitment webinar. Okay, let's see. So that's testing. Now, this is an example of A/B testing with a picture, but you can do this for everything. If you think maybe sales advisor would be a better title than sales consultant, you can do the same here. You just put sales consultant on one campaign and sales advisor in the other one. You test campaign for a couple of days, look at what's giving the best results, and then you continue with, well, I would advise to continue with the winner of the test. Kind of would be stupid to do otherwise, but of course, that's completely up to you. And that's, by the way, also something our software will automatically do for you. And we talked about videos also. These are some examples of videos which we make for our customers instead of a picture. And you can, of course, also test videos. You can start testing different variations of the same videos against each other. Or, and that's something which we always do, test the video versus the picture. Because I know Facebook advises you to always use video, and I think they're right in doing that. But we also notice that in some campaigns, sometimes the picture is working better than the video. If you're going to be asking me why, I have no clue. Is the honest answer. And that's why you should do as much A/B testing as you can when you have the time and the budget for that. Because that's important, of course, when you're going to be doing A/B testing, it's going to increase the budget of your total campaign. But we honestly think it's worth it because your efficiency of the campaign will be a lot better. I will talk about budgeting and how to calculate the budget for your campaign in a couple of minutes. Okay, now we talked about the top line, the reasons why you should be doing Facebook. We talked about kind of how do you, what you need to prepare, how do you prepare your campaign. But let's now get very practical and very pragmatic in how do you set up a campaign. Now, what's important to understand is even before you go into Facebook Ads Manager, and that's the tool you'll be using to set up your campaign, Facebook has actually 3 big elements or components based on their campaign. And those already, I think half of you have already done Facebook campaigns. You're going to be aware of that. But at the top level, you have something which is called the campaign objective. And that's why you'll decide what is it that you actually want to do with your campaign. Is it to reach as many people as possible and show your brand? And think back to the marketing funnel, the discovery phase. You want to reach as many people as possible. Then your objective will be traffic or reach, right? If you're further down the funnel and your objective is to make people apply for your vacancy, your campaign objective is going to be conversion, right? Because you want to tell Facebook, this campaign, I want you to look for people who are most likely to apply for my vacancy. So keep in mind that the decision you make at the top level is going to influence everything which is coming after that. Secondly, your ad sets. Now, in the ad sets, that's where you're going to define your audience, your targeting, right? We talked about the data sets you have about the car leasing company looking for people with interest in cars. You'll define that at the ad set level, as well as your budget. And your budget, we'll talk about that later, could be either a maximum budget or a daily budget. There's quite a bit of possibilities there. And with channels, we mean you could decide to go only Facebook, only Instagram, Facebook and Instagram together, Facebook Messenger. That's what you define at the ad set level. And only in the level below, that's where you kind of define your ads. So that's where what we've shown before, you upload your copy, you upload your visual. Now, what's important is that you can have several ads in the same ad sets. The name is kind of giving it away, right? And that's something, for instance, you could do if you want to test 2 different visuals as an A/B test. You can have one ad set, but with 2 different ads in there. Or you could test Instagram versus Facebook, and that's where you have one ad set with Facebook and another ad set with Instagram and test them against each other there. So this setup is very important to understand because Facebook Messenger is quite complicated. If you don't understand the 3-step approach here, it's going to be even more complicated once you start building that up. Again, we have a workshop also where we show you how to set up Facebook Ads Manager, how to go into detail. With that, I invite you to have a look at that workshop, or to make it even easier, just use our software. That was a shameless plug of self-promotion right there. Now, that's your campaign components. Obviously, if you talk about budget, you want to know how much is this going to cost you. And that's where Facebook gets a bit complicated, right? Because if you're used to posting your ad on a job board or even on LinkedIn, for instance, it's going to cost me 300 euros per month or 60 cents per click or whatever the business model is that you're looking for. Facebook is completely different. Actually, you will never know upfront what your campaign is going to cost. And that might seem a bit weird as a statement, but you need to understand Facebook is a bidding platform. So let's take back my earlier example. You want to reach people with an interest in cars. you're going to be wanting to target them. Volvo, same, right? And basically, everybody's going to tell them how much money they have available for bidding for that particular audience. So let's assume car audience. And the more people bidding for that same audience, the higher the price will be, right? It's a standard question of supply and demand, standard economics. We all know those. So that's also where it's going to be important to start thinking about what might be a unique audience for you, because the chances are you're going to be bidding less and going to be paying less to reach them. That's one thing that's going to be influencing your cost. The second part is the estimated action rates. Now, the more advertising you have done in the past, the more Facebook knows about you and your account. And basically, they will actually start understanding how good your campaigns work, right? And they will reward you on that. So the better your campaigns have been in the past, the cheaper your campaigns will become in the future. And lastly, and this is a really important one to understand, it's the value you're giving to the users. Facebook is well aware that on one hand, yes, they are making money from advertising, but on the other hand, if they piss off their users because they show the wrong advertising and their users are not going to be returning to Facebook, or they will be spending less time on Facebook, then they can make less money by selling advertising. It's kind of a catch-22 or a kind of a vicious circle on that. So Facebook will be paying close attention to what's going to happen to people who click on their advertising. So for instance, if they click on your advertising for a vacancy, and they will track people coming to your vacancy page, and they will notice that they come back after 5 seconds, the conclusion of the Facebook algorithm will be, hey, you're promising something on your page that's not true, so therefore the price of your advertising is going to increase. And that's why it's really important that you also track what's happening with users once they come onto your vacancy page. Okay, again, I'm hoping this is clear, but don't hesitate to ask me any questions on that. So these 3 steps are very important to keep in mind when calculating your budget. Now, we know that's complicated, so we actually devised a fancy formula for doing that based on 3 elements. It's a Google sheet, and we'll paste the link to that in our software, in the chat also. And based on that, you'll be able to actually calculate your conversion rate. What does that mean? Conversion rate means you divide your applications by the numbers of people who have come onto your vacancy. So for instance, you have 550 applications for a vacancy, 1,250 people have viewed your vacancy. That means you have a conversion rate of 4%. That's a very good conversion rate, right? And once you start understanding your conversion rates, that will actually also help you in understanding and calculating your budgets, which is also something you can do with the financial Facebook formula that we have, and that we'll share with you. And that's also going to be available, by the way, on our resources page, and we'll share a link to our resources page later on. Okay, so you now know the basics on how to set up your campaign. You have an idea on the kind of budget you need and that you need to ask your boss to make available. So you're almost all set to do that. There's just one thing which we want to help you with, which is very important, as we mentioned already: data, data, data. The more data you have, the better your campaigns will be. And it also means you need to understand yourself what that data is and where that data is coming from. So let's start off with a first question, again, on the Facebook Pixel. I'm going to launch another poll just to understand whether you have already installed the Facebook Pixel. So let's have a look at that. Again, the poll on the right-hand side of your screen. Okay. What the hell is a Facebook Pixel? Seems to be winning. and very few of you, only 20%, have actually installed it. But good for you, though. Okay, let's briefly explain what it is. As 50% of you have never heard of it. The Facebook Pixel is actually a small bit of code, one line of code, which you can add to your website, and which allows you to actually understand what happens to people after they click from Facebook and they come onto your website. It's not only important so you have the insights, but actually you're feeding back that information to Facebook so they can actually use that to optimize their campaigns. And as an example, you've probably all surfed on a clothing website or Zalando or Amazon. You've looked at an item and then you haven't bought that item, but afterwards on different websites, you see the advertising for those shoes or that particular laptop that you've been eyeing. You see the advertising coming back. That's called retargeting, very powerful. And you can actually do that also for your vacancies. But in order to do that, you need a Facebook Pixel. Again, if you want to start building audience, if you want to gather data, if you want to make your future campaigns more powerful, you'll need the Facebook Pixel. So if there's anything you're going to be doing today after this webinar, please make it that you go to your IT team, or you can do it yourself and install the Facebook Pixel on your vacancy pages. Ideally, you put it on all the pages of your company's website, but at the very least, you should put it on your vacancy page. Now, once you've done that, or even if you haven't done that, there's a couple of other tools which really advise you to use, and they're all free. That's very important, right? One is Google Analytics, and Google Analytics is a fantastic tool that will allow you to measure how many people are coming onto your website, how long are they staying there, where are they coming from, what are they doing on your website, are they applying, are they not applying, how much percentage of your page have they read. But if you're really serious about improving your campaigns on Facebook and Instagram, I strongly advise you to at least go and install Google Analytics. You're going to IT anyway, right? So you might as well ask them, and for the Facebook Pixel, and for Google Analytics, and why not ask them for Google Tag Manager at the same time? Because that will allow you to easily install items like the Facebook Pixel on certain pages. So again, a free tool by Google that will only help you in the future. So priority one, Google Analytics. If you have a bit more time, also install Google Tag Manager and learn to work with Google Tag Manager. And you have even more time, let's be crazy here, install Google Data Studio. Because Google Data Studio is a visualization tool for data. I probably didn't really pronounce that properly. It's a visualization tool. Very difficult word that. I should find a different word. It's a reporting tool. That's probably easier. It's a reporting tool to help you actually take all the data you have from Facebook, from Google Analytics, from your own website, put that into a nice report, and actually show to your manager why you need more budget for your recruitment campaigns. Okay, now, if you don't have time to install Google Analytics, the Pixel, the Facebook Ads Manager, obviously, we're here to help, right? And our software can actually help you set up your campaign. I'll very briefly show you what we can do actually, and how we can help you. As you can start here, yes, I'm visible on the screen. Oh no, it's not visible on the screen. Let's move that around. There you go. As you can see here, if you're looking for that same barista, our software will easily help you set that up with a checklist, what you still need to do. In this case, we've already done the targeting. You can build your ad pages. You can actually even build your vacancy page. So everything is done within our software. But even, and this is really important, and let's give you another example here, right? Our software will also help you setting up your campaigns, tracking how many visits you have, all the work that something like Google Analytics might do will do for you. And on top of that, to make it even more perfect, you'll even be managing your candidates within the same software. So you'll see which candidates have applied. You can move them around. You can look at the details they've given you and the answers they've given you. Have they sent you their resume? You can actually send them an email. You can look at the questions they've answered onto your website, onto your vacancy page. So basically, if you're serious about recruitment marketing, we've done all the hard work for you with our software. We're going to paste a free trial, a 2-week free trial into our software now. I'll just ask somebody from the team does that. So go there, register for free. You can use our software for free. And even more important, I almost forgot, on the left here, you can see our Simple Academy. And that's also where you'll find all the other webinars, all the other white papers I've been talking about. So you can easily find them here. So another good reason to register on there. Okay, good. Let's move on to the final slides of our presentation. Let's go back here. Oh yeah, just again to explain to you, our software not only makes it easier for you to set up campaign, but actually our algorithm will also automatically do the A/B testing, look at the most performing ads, stop the low performing ads, put more money on the high performing ads. So everything actually I've explained till now, if you don't feel like doing that yourself, our software will do that for you. All right, I think we're almost there. Q&A. Let's have a look if there's any other questions. You haven't been a very questionable audience, but I understand maybe we've been going a bit too quick. So let's give you 10 seconds to see if you want to have a couple of questions. No questions? That either means I've been very eloquent and very clear in my explanation. Let's hope it's that. Or I've been confusing the hell out of you and nobody even knows what kind of questions they would ask. I'm going to assume it's the first one. Okay, so if you don't have any more questions, these are our contact details. And again, I've been stepping in for Stephanie. So if you don't want to ask me questions, you can always go straight to Stephanie and ask her questions. But don't hesitate, any other questions you might have. And then I'll end with a very short poll on just asking you whether you think this was useful, and also more importantly, on what other subjects you would like to see us giving another webinar. So let's give you a bit of time on that. All right, and I don't see any other questions coming in. So I'll just okay, no more questions. I guess that's it, folks. So I'll be closing down this this version. Once more, apologies for the technical issues we had. I'll be calling my internet provider in the next 5 minutes. I can promise you that. But thanks for those of you who stayed online. I hope it was useful. And as we said before, you have our details. Please don't hesitate to send us any other questions you might have. All right, and that's going to be the end of today.